Welcome back to another edition of the podcast, and tonight is our Game Week 14 National League preview and predictions. Myself and Paul at the moment will be very happy after the mid-week fixtures. That's 4 wins on the bounce now for the mighty Shaman, which of course we will be speaking about very shortly. And of course for Wheelstone as well, away at Brackley. Take it away, Paul. Firstly, how are you? And of course, a great win in midweek.
Yeah, a brilliant win. We always struggle a little bit away from home. Historically, we're always much better at the Vale, or that's so it appears. But yeah, I mean, to get a 2-0 win, I wasn't there, unfortunately, but the consensus was that we outplayed them, from minute one. And I think Brackley fans are very much of the opinion that, they were second to everything. And I think what's quite pleasing for Wilson is they haven't got a centre forward that's going to score them 10, 15, 20 goals a season, but they're still scoring goals in games and they're sharing that around. And Michael Biero got on the score sheet the other night, who has been playing in a bit of an unfamiliar position up front, and he's been a little bit chastised in some of his performances, and quite rightly so. But he seemed to step up in the last couple of games, and so it's looking good. I suppose we're another 3 points from that 52, 53 point mark and not going down. But at the moment, in terms of where they're sitting mid-table, it's looking good, but not looking quite as good as your team, Halifax, Luke, in terms of, getting a new manager in, a bit of a turnover of players. They're really starting to show a bit of form now, aren't they?
Yeah, they certainly are. Of course, Halifax have now climbed up to 6th in the National League table. The first time this season they're actually sitting inside the playoff spots after defeating high-flying Rochdale. It's, I think, a statement win, I'll say, for Halifax Town that yesterday. Of course, Rochdale themselves have started very strong this season. Had the opportunity yesterday, and of course, Forest Green slipped up, so they could have actually gone top of the National League. And of course, it's only the second time this season they've actually dropped points in any game. It's the first time they've lost at home. And all I'm going to say on this is I actually want to give Rochdale some respect, because I think they are a very good side yesterday. And so something that always frustrates me, it's like anyone, whenever I suppose the strong favourites lose a game, it's always automatically focused on them being really poor. And it wasn't the case. I think, if I'm being honest, although we defended very well and we were clinical in front of goal, I actually felt overall, on another night they could have beaten us, because, they did miss a lot of, key opportunities for them, and it certainly could have been a different story. But in terms of their all-round play, some of the football they've been playing, there's not many sides, if any, that I've seen that have been capable of playing some of the football that Rochdale were playing the other night. There's certain things I think the manager, in my opinion, that were quite strange to me, even as a Halifax fan going into that game. Not starting Devante Rodney was very strange, I thought, considering his form at the start of the season, and as well against Halifax, one of his former clubs. I feel like when you're always playing against your former club, kind of gives you that additional kind of fight, doesn't it, potentially, to want to do more in a game. So it was surprising to see that he didn't start. And even during the game, when they had all the momentum, they were taking key players off that I didn't understand why they were taking them off. But that being said, some of the football that McNulty's got Rochdale set up to play is absolutely not at this level at all. And I do want to give them credit for that. But on the other hand, for Halifax to go there and not only pick up a result, pick up all 3 points, people need to start taking Adam Lakeland and FC Halifax Town seriously. I think every season they're always kind of written off a little bit, aren't they? I think even myself, I never really back us to finishing the playoffs on paper. But I have to say, once again, I know it's early and I don't want to get ahead of myself, and there's other sides as well who are certainly overachieving, who we're going to come on to very shortly. But I think we are a very good team, a very good footballing side, and I think we were set up perfectly for that Rochdale game.
No, I agree. And I saw Halifax early in the season. They were certainly a team. When you and I did the commentary down at the Vale, and they certainly looked like a team in transition, didn't they? I know they went down. They lost a player early as well, which didn't help their cause. But if you look at Halifax, and I know they were more established in the league compared to someone like Morecambe, but you look what Morecambe are doing, where they're having to bring in players and almost start again. I know Halifax weren't quite on the same level, but what Adam Lakeland has done in terms of being able to mould his squad now as quickly as he's had to get them into seventh, there's a lot of credit to be had there, because he's coming into a league he doesn't really know. He's coming into a league that there's some big hitters in there, and he had, whether Halifax fans like it or not, he had something to follow in Chris Millington, because Millington got him to Wembley and playoffs and all that sort of thing, and on probably a modest budget for the league. So fair play to Adam Lakeland, because he's adapted very quickly, and so is his team, and they're sitting in the playoffs at the moment, Luke. And I think even 2 or 3 weeks ago, we wouldn't have been saying that about Halifax. So, fair play to him. It is a statement win playing Rochdale. I agree with you. I've seen Rochdale play this season. Probably the best team I've seen play against Wealdstone. Very, very good very, very good football team. And, it makes for a really good competitive top end with themselves, Forest Green, York, once they get a bit of consistency, Carlisle and the likes of Boreham Wood, who are getting into that mix. So, a really competitive league at the top end. And I think the midweek results have kind of thrown that around a little bit as well. There were some unusual results in midweek. And, I think one of those, Wealdstone beating Bratley, maybe I'm not really surprising. Halifax winning, very surprising. York losing to Scunthorpe, possibly not, but a 6-pointer. So some real good games in midweek that has really helped that league, going into the weekend.
Yeah, it's not only Halifax who are now in the playoffs. Scunthorpe United have also maintained their playoff spot. There's going to be a lot of talk on them very shortly. But a team that certainly are going under the radar, in my eyes, and are now actually sitting inside the playoffs, is Tamworth. Of course, they went away to Altrincham on Tuesday night, I believe, and actually took all 3 points away there. A great win for Tamworth. And once again, like last season, a lot of people felt, including myself, potentially it's more realistic for them to just survive this season. Whereas now, it feels like once again, they're aiming to potentially, at the moment, the way they're playing, they're competing for the playoffs. And it's surprising considering, all the issues they've had in terms of them being part-time, being quite a competitive area for recruiting players, particularly when you think of, Solihull around the corner from them, who can probably, steal their best players or can take players that potentially they were watching too. And Andy Peaks' Tamworth side, once again, certainly being huge underdogs in the opening 10 games or so of this National League season. They sit 7th now.
I know, incredible. And they beat Alty in the week, and Altrincham are on a wretched run of form. We'll talk more about them when we do the predictions, I suppose. But there was always a worry with Tamworth, Luke, that they'd have that second season syndrome. Teams will find them out. They lost a few players, have had to bring a few in to turn the squad again. They're not going to be on massive amounts of money per player. But I suppose, getting someone like Andy Peaks, who now knows the league, he's played in it as a player back in the day. He's managed in it now at regional level and at national level in the National League. And he knows what it takes to win a game of football. And I know they're not brilliant to watch, I don't suppose, at times, and they're very industrial, and they use a long throw, and they've got a plastic pitch and nada. But at the end of the day, they've got to stay in the National League. And for them to sit currently in 7th place, 6th place, and they go into the weekend and they're playing Morecambe at home, that, you'd like to think they're only going to strengthen their position potentially in that playoff place. So, yeah, fair play to them. I mean, they played Wealdstone last week, drew 1-1. They went 1-0 down. They were resilient enough to get that result and get a draw and didn't lose. So, fair play to Tamworth, because they could easily have crumbled a little bit, I suppose, in that sense, and found it difficult. But no, they seem to be really holding there. They'll be similar to what Wealdstone are, and maybe Braintree and possibly Boreham Wood at the time. Brackley, they just need to get to 52, 53 points. And then whatever takes them from there, And if they can get there as quick as they can, then what else have they got to achieve? They've got, it will be a bonus, I think. So, yeah, fair play to Tamworth. They're doing well. And you'd like to think that they'll probably keep it up because of the type of team and the type of club they are.
Just one defeat in 9 now for Tamworth, which actually came away at York City, which is no disgrace, losing to them away from home. And actually at home this season, they've actually only had one defeat, which came on the opening day to Scunthorpe, who themselves are flying at the moment in the National League. And that's a good way to bring us on to Scunthorpe United. I'm going to be honest here. I thought all along that they will be a side that fall off. And I think, you know what, they've got Forest Green coming up. Yeah, they'll lose that. Or they've got Southend coming up. I think they'll struggle against them. And even the York game, I thought it'd be quite a competitive game against them. But I didn't expect them to go there and take all 3 points. And Scunthorpe United went away to York and won, keeping their unbeaten start to the season going. The Irons actually used an emergency loan to bring in Leeds United's under-21s goalkeeper in Rory Marady, I think it is how you pronounce it. He's come on loan to them, which they've used. And he actually got in the National League Team of the Week as well. I think there'll be other Scunthorpe players who'll be quite frustrated that they didn't get him because by the sounds of it, he didn't have too much to do, did the goalkeeper. They've now remained, Scunthorpe, unbeaten against Forest Green Rovers, Boreham Wood, and have since actually defeated Southend United last weekend and have now gone away to York City and won there. I'm sorry, but based on that form, I still don't think they'll be title contenders at all. I think they are. I don't see that. But based on that form, they certainly are title contenders at the moment, aren't they?
Oh, without a doubt. And I mean, to be unbeaten all season, I mean, Forest Green the only other team that haven't been beaten yet, and to have come up from the National League North, incredible for them. And even more impressively, when you look at who they played, like you've just listed them, I had them listed down as well, and I thought that it was really noticeable who they played. And then the team they played who should be easier for them, Truro, they beat them 4-0. They haven't just got over the line. They convincingly won. They just seem to have a real good mix of being able to defend and attack. And long may it continue for Scunthorpe. It's difficult, isn't it? We'll have to wait and see as the games go into this, December, January, and maybe they're still in the FA Trophy or they're still in the FA Cup, and there's squad injuries and suspensions. Will they be able to cope with maybe some of the other bigger teams? But winning breeds and winning mentality, and if you keep going where you're not being beaten, fans are going to be up for it, players are going to be up for it, and all of a sudden, people are going to turn up at Glanford Park and think, are we going to win today? Because they're already, they might feel like they're already beat before they get across that line. Forest Green are having that tight, with Robbie Savage and the way that he is with his mentality, his positivity. Forest Green will be thinking the same. So, listen, Scunthorpe are doing exceptionally well, and fair play to them, because that is one hell of a win on, going away to York, who just dispatched Carlisle at the same ground only a week before, 5-0. Unbelievable result.
I think that'll be another game as well, I'd have assumed. I've not really looked at social media in terms of that game and Twitter feeds. But I'd be surprised if it's not a case of that game being more focused on how poor York were than actually focusing on Scunthorpe going away to York and doing an absolute job on them like they have done on Southend. Like they did by taking a point at Forest Green. And they were very, very close at the Forest Green to taking all 3 points once again. I'll be honest. I think I've always thought, particularly when I saw Halifax play against them, when I've seen some of the other games, I know, when I look at some of the games that they've played previously, like drawing against Brackley, potentially, when I look back at that, I've always thought, maybe they're just overachieving at the moment. They're getting a little bit lucky in games. I thought against us, although they went down to 10 men, I felt like they were quite fortunate to get anything from that game. However, the more I think about it now, I think they do the basics perfectly, if that makes sense. I think defensively, they're very strong, which they are. And then going forward, they've got some very, very good attackers, like the likes of Carl Roberts, who's a great individual who can change a game within a second. Even Ewing in the midfield, who's stepped up from the league below, he's been excellent in that like midfield position. And even forwards, they've got a goal scorer in Danny Whitehall. Declan Howe, once again, he's stepped up to this division. A lot of these players, and it was always a question, would they be able to step up to the division? And they all are doing excellently so far in this season. And it's a good mix of experienced players who, in this division in the past, have potentially been fringe players, but know this division off the back of the hand, and players who are up and coming from the league below, like Declan Howe. For example, you've got the likes of Mark Beck there, who himself, is yet to score this season, but his experience, will be key in this division. He knows this division like the back of his hand. And I think as well, when I think of the manager, Andy Butler, he was one who received a lot of criticism by analysts in the summer of being someone as he had a lot. They were the biggest club in the National League North by a country mile. They should have outrightly won that division. They didn't win the division. They've scraped through and got promoted in the end. I can't really. A lot of people felt I don't really see much of them this season. Maybe they'll probably just about stay up. Some people even tip them to go down. However, I think he's proved absolutely everyone wrong with this opening start. To sit fourth in the league table after just getting promoted, I can't remember the last side to do that. I think maybe Stockport, when they got promoted from the National League North themselves, who had a lot of money, I think they probably started quite well. But apart from that, there's not been many sides for me who have been, in the playoffs after 11 games in the National League as well. In the playoffs, they win both games in hand. They actually go above Forest Green Rovers. You're on mute.
Yeah, no, I had it down, in terms of Scunthorpe played Carlisle the weekend, and they, that's another big game for them. And I think if they can win that one, I think they go above them. And again, that would be a real statement sort of win off the back of playing York and playing York convincingly enough to win 3-1. Like you said, Luke, I think there's a feeling that York maybe felt they should win the game because of who they are and they're at home, and they'd beaten Carlisle 5-0. And I think some of the fans are disgruntled at the performance of the team off the back of such a good performance against Carlisle under the lights. But listen, Scunthorpe, the thing with them is now they're settled off the pitch. They've got everything in place to push on and become a bigger team again in the league. And we know the troubles they had over the last few years where they dropped down a couple of leagues and have had to build themselves back up. But they're certainly heading in the right direction. You're quite right in terms of who they've got, in their midfield and forward line, and getting the young lad from Leeds is a great masterstroke. And it appears that there were some fans on social media today asking whether he could extend his loan a little bit longer because he did so well. So, no, fair play to Scunthorpe. It's not easy coming into this league, no matter how big they are and whether they've been in here before. And them and Boreham Wood, in terms of promoted sides, are really pushing for showing that it can be done once you step into this league.
100% agree. And a final game that I want to focus on from the midweek fixtures is Morecambe 2, Gateshead 5. Both sides have certainly been entertaining this season, potentially maybe not for the right reasons in terms of the defensive side of things. When we actually look at Morecambe this season themselves, Morecambe are now averaging to concede over 3 goals a game. And I don't think Gateshead are that far behind them. However, for Gateshead, that's a great win away from home for them. That's now 2 wins on the bounce for them. And of course, they're coming up against Boston on Saturday, who will come on to preview that fixture shortly. But you'd like to think from Gateshead's perspective, that's a winnable game for them. Firstly, what's your thoughts on Gateshead, and then, of course, on Morecambe?
Well, I don't know. We've talked about Gateshead being Jekyll and Hyde. Clearly the Jekyll turned up on what was it, Tuesday or Wednesday night, 4-0 up after 12 minutes. I mean, Morecambe must have thought hell hit them. Between them, they've let 61 goals in. So they're always going to be susceptible to letting goals in. And it's not surprising that it was a 5-2 scoreline. I think what was surprising was that you go 4-0 down in 12 minutes. that's worrying for Morecambe. And when you look at them, they've let 19 goals in the last 5 matches, which is just nuts. No matter how good you are going forward, you can sign all the Rolando Aarons and Miguel Azizes of this world. But if you've got a playing philosophy where you're going to outscore the other team and it's not happening, you're going to get done. And it's proving that. And is the Morecambe manager now realizing that academy football is massively different to actually first team football? He's now managing players that are earning money to put food on the table. It's mortgage football, even though it's at the top end of the non-league game. 3 points every week matters. He's come from an environment and sort of situations where he's developing players, and results probably aren't the first thing that's in the forefront of everyone's mind. Well, it certainly is now being a first team manager of a National League side. And is this now starting to prove a little bit too much for him? I'd hope to think not, because we've got to give these guys an opportunity. But to go 4-0 down in 12 minutes, having already let in 14 goals in the games before, you're not going to win any points, let alone any games, behaving like that. So worrying times for Morecambe. They come up against Tamworth on Saturday, and that's not going to be an easy game for them to try and wrestle any points from.
I suppose it is a long project for Morecambe with everything that's gone on there. Of course, the new manager coming in, Ashveer Singh, there. Potentially, what I'd say is it feels like he's a little bit naive to the actual division as a whole. I think with his recruitment as well, he's signing a lot of players from the higher divisions to come down who were big names. For example, Ronaldo Aarons. Yes, on paper, that's a ridiculous signing for this division. But you've got to think there's a reason that he's dropped down into this division, isn't there? There's a reason that he's playing National League football and he's not playing Championship or League One football like he once was. And that's because he potentially isn't the same player. He's probably unfit as well. There's a reason in Morecambe's situation, it's not an easy position for them to be in. They were late to the party in terms of being able to recruit players. Yes, these are big names they're bringing in, but these players didn't sign for anyone in the summer. There's a reason that no one in the summer wanted to bring these players in. Potentially that's because the fitness wasn't up to it. And that's what I'm gauging at the moment. When you actually look at the games, they're not losing games they're getting quite heavily beaten. And something else I've noticed, the later the game goes on, overall, when I look at them, they seem to tire. I think against Halifax, they took an early lead, looked very good in that first half. The second half, you watch them, and they just absolutely complete. No, I can't even say their word, but yeah, they basically.
Players,
yeah, exactly. That you've got it anyway. Yeah, but yeah, in that second half, they were like a completely different team, and that's because fitness took its toll overall for them. Which potentially, I suppose, it's always an uphill battle for the manager in the position coming in there, but I just feel like the way potentially Morecambe have looked to recruit is to bring a lot of names in to potentially, impress the fans. And I think as well, it feels like to me he's more bothered about trying to bring his philosophy in terms of attractive football across and making Morecambe play really nice football than actually it being a results business and being able to grind out results to be able to keep Morecambe in the National League. Because in terms of this season, the aim is for Morecambe to survive in the National League. And the way they're playing at the moment, it feels like they're a little bit out of the depth.
Yeah, you're completely right. I think that is probably the best way to sum it up. They appear to be out of their depth in certain areas. And how do you stop it? Because I think we discussed it the last couple of weeks. Do we know, or does he know, or do we really know if he knows his best 11? His formation, his who plays in what position? He's brought in 30 plus players. That's not going to be any good for cohesion and a little bit of stability in terms of getting an 11 on the pitch who have got an understanding of each other and an understanding of the league that they're playing in. And they play Tamworth on Saturday, and you can guarantee Tamworth are going to absolutely bombard them. They're going to just stick the ball in the box, get the ball forward, long throws, set plays, restarts. If they're, Gateshead are a very good football inside and play very well on Tuesday night, Tamworth don't play a huge amount of football. They will try and score a goal any way they can, and it's much more direct. And if Morecambe can't deal with that, they could get another drubbing. So it's really difficult for them at the moment because you can't see where. Yeah, even the one game they won, Luke, was against Wealdstone. They were 3-0 up. And if you speak to Wealdstone fans, Wealdstone didn't play particularly well, but still managed to claw it back to 3-3. So they were 3-0 up at home, and they almost didn't get the maximum points. And if it wasn't for some indeficiencies in the Wealdstone team on the day, Morecambe would have come away with being 3-0 up and not getting anything out of it. As it did, they got the 3 points. Fair play to them. But they still had to score 4 goals to win a game at home. You shouldn't have to be winning 4 goals to win a game at home, especially when you're 3-0 up. So, even in the victory, there's worries there. So, yeah, they look like they're a struggle. We had them near the bottom because we didn't think they were going to start the league. They've started the league, and potentially they're still going to finish bottom because they are out. Currently, they appear to be out of their depth.
What's your thoughts then? Would you be keeping the current manager in, or would you be making a change? I feel like it's quite an awkward situation with everything that's gone on there, and particularly a lot of these players are his own players. But like I've said, it's a results business. Morecambe don't want. If Morecambe can avoid getting relegated, I think they should do what's ever necessary to do so. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because he came in with a bit of fanfare, new owners, brought in their own man. If you read social media in the week, they apparently paid 6 figures to pay off Derek Adams and sack Derek Adams, and who had done an amazing job, not just on the field in the turbulent times, but off the field in terms of how he treated all the staff and players and the care he shows for them, to then be bombed out and paid off to get their own guy in. And if they end up doing sacking him off the back of getting rid of Derek Adams, it may look as a real failure to them as a new ownership team. So do they stick with it to save face? But then how far do they stick with it? I mean, most managers now, Luke, I know they've not played as many. What have they played? They played 10 games rather than 12 or 13.
Only played 11, I think. So
yeah, so they've played 10 games. They've only won 2 of those. Most managers now, we've seen loads of managers in this league succumb to losing their jobs with better records than that. So yeah, he's certainly going to be under pressure. He sort of talked the talk, hasn't he? He sort of said we're going to have the best team and and he's brought in all these decent players and on paper, and he shows that he's got a good brand of football. He's got 7 points out of 10 games, so I think he's definitely under pressure. But for Morecambe's sake, they've got a team to watch every week. They're not going to be happy, but let's put it into perspective. They may not have started the season, so maybe that's tempering their thoughts a little bit.
Solihull Moors and Sutton United have both taken their time in finding their replacements for the managers that they've recently dismissed. Let's hear a little bit more about that in a second.
We'll show you how to get 51% off the RRP of the Sum Up Air. With no contracts or monthly fees and a low 1.69% per transaction, this handy device makes it easy to accept all card payments. Simply visit www.sumup.co.uk/cardsaccepted and click Order Now. Link also in description. Free shipping and 30-day money-back guarantee.
Starting things off then with Solihull Moors. Chris Millington, the former FC Halifax Town manager, has been appointed as the new Solihull Moors manager, alongside his recent assistant in Andy Cooper. At their time at Halifax Town, in the 3 seasons they spent there, with Millington being the first team coach, he achieved back-to-back playoff spots for the Shaman and an FA Trophy win in his debut season as well. The appointment comes 1 month after the dismissal of Matthew Taylor. So they've certainly taken a time in finding the replacement. And for me, in the current position that Solihull Moors are, I'm not just saying this, I don't think realistically there was any better man for the job.
No, I mean, you know, more than most, Luke. You know, he's a very, very good manager. He's not one that shouts from the treetops when things are going badly, or or give it the big one when things are going well. He just seems very level-headed and probably the right fit for someone like Solihull, because that's what they are as a football team, aren't they? They just go along. They've had some good managers over the last few years. They're not the biggest team in the league. They've got a tidy little ground, small fan base, but they're so efficiently run, and they've been so efficient on the field as well that, you know, Andy Wing going and Matt Taylor coming in seemed to be a little bit of a wrong choice, and we've talked about in the past. But I think Chris Middleton's a perfect fit for that football club, and you know he will probably get the best out of the squad they've got, because they've got some good footballers on paper, without a doubt. I mean, you know him much better than I do, Luke, so you'd be a better place to sort of really talk about what he's like. But you know, my only disappointment with Chris Middleton was I think he got it a little bit wrong going into the playoffs last year, in terms of this. You know, he tried to mix it up and rest players against us at Willstone at the end, which I don't think helped going into the playoffs, etc. But you know, apart from that, he did a sterling job at Halifax, and I think you were sort of quite vocal in the fact that he wasn't given the support he maybe should have gotten from the stands, and I'm pretty sure he will at Solihull. And you know, goes to Eastleigh on Saturday, not an easy game to start with, because they've got a fairly new manager as well, in Scott Bartlett. So you know, he's going to start on a good game, and I think he's a good appointment for Solihull.
I totally agree with you. I think, you know, he can work with what he's got. If you actually think about Halifax from an outside perspective, they're a side that's got a bottom 6 budget, and in the 3 seasons he was there, he got 2 playoff spots, 11th place finish in his first season as Halifax manager, also winning the FA Trophy as well. So every single season at Halifax, we always had something to play for in the right way come the end of the season. And, you know, I think at Solihull at the moment, because they've kind of invested quite heavily in terms of in the summer, supported, certainly backing Matt Taylor, Millington probably won't have the opportunity to bring in his own players as such. But I don't think that'll be an issue, because he can get the best out of any team. He can set them up very well. He'll have them very well organised, which they need to be at the moment. And I think over time, unlike Halifax, he will have a better budget to work with at Solihull Moors. And I saw it at signs with Halifax when he had a full squad fit and he had players coming in. It's not just all negative, defensive-minded football. I think over time, if he had a better budget, which I think he's going to have at Solihull Moors, we're going to see more of the attacking-minded type of manager that I think potentially, you know, he could be, given a bigger budget. I think at Halifax, he just was realistic. He worked with what he had. And he wanted Halifax to be competing towards the top of the table. And the most effective way of doing that was being defensively strong and looking to play sides on the break. At Solihull, he's going to have a better budget to work with. Over time, maybe not at the moment, but over time, we will see that, because I think he'll be able to bring in his own players. And these own players, because of the budget Solihull Moors on paper, should be to a better standard. You're mute.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the proof's in the pudding now. He hasn't not say he's got no excuses, because Solihull aren't going to be huge in that league compared to some others. But he's probably got a slightly better setup than Halifax to be able to produce some results. So, you know, we'll wait and see in terms of how he gets on. You know, as I think Solihull are going to have to sort of just look and go, well, let's just consolidate. Let's not slip into that bottom 6, 7, 8, where we're going to be scrapping around to potentially get relegated. And then Chris Middleton can look at the second half of the season and say, right, wait, can we push on? Yeah, he might bring some players in that he knows of in January, just to boost the squad and get players that he knows himself. But no doubt they would have been talking to him for a while. No doubt he knows he was probably in the frame for that job. So he would have been looking at how Solihull were getting on, what the squad are up to, what the players are like. He's been in the league long enough. He's going to know some of those players as well. So it's not unfamiliar to him. They're not unfamiliar to him. So I think, it's a good fit. And let's just see how the next few weeks pan out, because the Halifax managers started well. The EC managers started well. The Morecambe manager hasn't started well. So you just never know how managers are going to adapt with their new teams.
Sutton United didn't get their dream appointment in Adam Hinchelwood, but these are linked to him in the manager they have appointed. Like Adam Hinchelwood, they've actually appointed his successor afterwards, which was Chris Aguta, who's actually come from Worthing. I don't think Worthing have had the best start to the season in the National League South, but certainly last season were competing to try get promoted. He's taking over Sutton when they currently sit in the bottom four. What's your thoughts on this overall? I think, he'll know a lot of the players because, a lot of them have played in the National League South in the past. The only slight concern is, considering Sutton's current position, does he have the experience of the National League to be able to keep them up?
Well, he's got experience in National League South. I suppose that helps you. I know it's a different kettle of fish, but Hinchell went into York, didn't have a huge amount of experience in the National League. Stuart Maynard, when he took over Wealdstone, didn't have a massive amount of experience in the National League. Scott Bartlett at Eastleigh hasn't. These players, Andy Peaks, all these managers that are coming in, you can only get the experience if you work in it, Luke. And someone's got to give these guys an opportunity. He'll back himself. He's worked under Hinchelwood. He's worked for Worthing, and they're another good outfit down there on the south coast who, haven't got a massive fan base. They're not a well-known team in non-league. They've worked their way up from more of the regional leagues rather than coming down. And I think it's a brave move for Sutton. It's a good job for somebody, because Sutton, certainly, as we've talked about, aren't a basket case. They've got themselves into the EFL and over the last few years didn't quite hang in there longer than they, as long as they probably wanted to. But it's a well-run football club. On paper, probably a little bit of an inexperienced young squad. We talked about Morrison flipping it last year, and could he push on this year? It certainly hasn't happened. They just need to basically get some results down now, Luke. I think, the new manager Bounce, will that help? He'll go in with a load of fresh ideas. He'll be hugely enthusiastic about the opportunity of working in the National League. Again, if he knows he's in for that job, he'll have learnt a bit more about the players he's going to manage. So we'll wait and see. A brave choice, a good choice for Sutton. I like it, giving these guys a chance. So let's just hope that he adapts to it, gets up and running, and gets Sutton a few results. Ultimately, he's on a hiding to nothing. He can't do any worse than they've already done, because they've started, they've really started really poorly, haven't they? So he's got a great opportunity at weekend. They're playing Braintree, who aren't on the best run of form themselves, who I think will be in that relegation mix. So a massive opportunity for him to stamp his authority on that team and get some support from the stands while going, look, we're going to go away to Braintree and get a result.
I agree with what you've said on it being a brave appointment, to be fair, because, I don't think they could have gone for the safe option where it's a manager potentially that would have just kept them in the division because they've got the experience. Like, I know he's not available, but like Darren Sarlo, or if they got Mark Cooper for potentially, these are managers that they'd keep you in the National League, certainly in Sutton's position, but I don't think they'd be able to progress Sutton into competing to get promoted, which I think is the ultimate goal for Sutton, is to get back to the Football League. Whereas they've gone for more of a left field, I think, appointment in terms of bringing someone who's not got much experience of the National League, but does like to play quite attractive football. And I think he'll be very enthusiastic as well. And the only issue you've got with a coach like this is it will definitely go either way. It'll either be a case of Sutton, it'll come together, potentially not this season. He'll keep them up and they'll be able to progress over time because of the football he likes to play. Or it'll be a case of it being a horrendous season for Sutton because he just doesn't have the experience to be able to keep them up.
No, you're right. And it's going to be really pivotal in the next few years. I mean, we're a quarter of the way through the season already, and they are struggling towards the bottom end. So he's still got 3/4 of a season to go. I think you've got to look positively at that. And if he can improve in the next quarter, improve in the quarter after, and then you push on. I honestly, Luke, I can't see them being involved in that relegation battle. But it's got to change quickly. It's got to change quickly, and I think that new manager will be the catalyst for that. And I can see them starting to climb up the table. But good luck to Chris Agato. It's a great appointment for him. Hope he does well in this league, and let's see whether Sutton start to get a few more points.
Thing is, you say that. The only thing is, I actually think it will work, this appointment, but I still think it's a brave appointment. I'm looking at that relegation battle at the moment, and there's not many teams for me where I'm quite convinced that, they're definitely going to be down there. For example, Truro at the moment, I think they're, for me, probably going to get relegated from what I've seen of them so far. I know at times they've had some very good victories. The 2 victories that they've had have been quite, heavy wins, haven't they, against Boston and Morecambe as well. But Boston and Morecambe are struggling themselves, or they were at the time. Morecambe, we spoke about them. At the moment, if they carry on in the way they are doing, they will be going down this season. But there's always that aim, isn't there, where on paper they've got a very good squad. Of course, a lot of them are unfit. So there's that potential for them to grow into the season, which I think a lot of people are predicting at the moment. Braintree, for me, I think they've actually had a reasonably okay start to the season, but as I thought at the start of the season, I thought they would go down. And from what I've seen so far, 11 points in 13 games, at the start of the season when you haven't been hit by injuries yet, for me, I think they're going to really struggle in that, and I think I'm pretty confident that prediction will be roundabouts correct. And then for that, final spot, will it be Sutton at the moment? But you'd probably think that they're going to get better. I'd like to think so, because of the budget that they've got, because on paper, I think there's a lot of experienced players for this division. But above them, you've got Altrincham, who have been hit by injury at the moment, which is probably why they're struggling as of late. Of course, 5 defeats on the bounce for them now, but they've been hit quite significantly with injuries. You've then got Woking, who've had a poor start to the season, before you come to Solihull, who've just appointed Chris Millington. And then after that, you've got the likes of Boston and Aldershot. 4 sides have got to go down. And at the moment, Truro and Brackley are the only ones that I'm really confident will go down. And then at the moment, I would say Morecambe, but I still think there's potential there.
No, I think you're right. I mean, Scott Flynn's are there. The league is competitive, see many swings around where it's going. I think hugely competitive at the top end and that bottom end in terms of who could go down, because we thought Woking might be able to pull themselves out of last year's sort of slump, and they managed to survive in the league, but they haven't really kicked on as much as they have. Morecambe, they are a little bit of a surprise entity. We don't really know what they're going to do. I think you're right with sort of Truro and Brackley. They could struggle. Braintree possibly, but there's going to be a team that drops in there. It could even be the likes of Wealdstone. It could be the likes of Tamworth. We don't know. There's still 3/4 of the season to go, so it's difficult to say at this point. But certainly, the clubs are making it harder for themselves at this present time by not picking results up when they hope they could. I'm not saying they should, because no one's got a given right to win a football match. So, I think there'll be teams down there panicking a little bit that, after a quarter of the games that they're on less than sort of 10, 11 points. But, if you times that by 4, it's not enough to stay up. So you got to start looking at that and maybe the mathematics of it and think, where are we now? Where could we be in after half the season and so on? And where could you pick your results up? And because it is so competitive, Luke, it's really hard to know where you might pick results up. It's a great league. I think it's a good league this year because there are teams that they're all a little bit more condensed. There's a little bit more evenness about it across the board, and there's some absolutely bonkers results. As we've seen over the last few weeks, it's great in that sense to teams do seem to be letting goals in. Not everyone, but there is teams letting goals in. There is teams scoring goals, and it's making it for a fun division at the moment.
Let's take a look at the predictions league then. Of course, Joe filled in for you on Sunday evening, and you'll be happy he did, because of course he beat me. He got 7 points towards your total tally of 80 points. Now you've taken the lead, and I only picked up 3, which isn't the best at all, if I'm being honest. You'll be looking to extend that this weekend.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, thanks, Joe. For I think what was it, about 4-3 the week before when we did it last Saturday. So it was quite tight, wasn't it? So I appreciate that, Joe. Thanks very much for helping me out. And let's see if I can kick on this week with another set of games. A couple of top end table clashes and a couple of basement clashes, and some real hard ones to predict off the back of the last couple of weeks sort of scores and results that we've seen with these teams. So a real tough one to sort of consider, but I'll give it a good go, Luke, and try and stretch that lead a little bit.
Of course, PTFT Travel does sponsor the predictions league. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Oh, if you have to, yeah. PTFT Travel is what I do as myself and my wife. We've got our own little travel consultancy. So anyone who is listening, I have had a few inquiries from listeners, so I do appreciate that. So anyone who needs any travel needs, then please let us know, and we'd be happy to service you.
We're back very shortly. Starting things off then with Gateshead versus Boston United. Gateshead have got back-to-back wins and actually put 5 past Morecambe, so they will certainly be feeling confident. In my opinion, they're in the best position Gateshead have been all season. Of course, they've had a bit of a mixed start, haven't they? You've mentioned Jekyll and Hyde earlier for them. As for Boston, to be fair, they picked up quite an impressive result in midweek, picking up a point against Forest Green Rovers. But I do fancy Gateshead for this one to make it 3 wins out of 3, and I'm going to go for a 3-1 Gateshead win. How do you see it going?
Oh, 3-1. I've gone with a 1-1 draw. I mean, Gateshead have picked up the last 2 games, as we've seen. It's an improvement of what we've been seeing over the last few weeks with them. Boston are tough. They've lost 1 in 5, and they played Bournemouth, Forest Green, and Southend. So they're tough nuts to crack. And I've gone with. I know Gateshead let a few goals in, but Boston aren't prolific goal scorers, so I don't think that's going to harm Gateshead too much. So I've gone with a 1-1 draw.
Moving on to the next fixture, it's Braintree Town coming up against Sutton United, who've just appointed their new manager. Sutton, of course, only 1 victory all season. But if there was any game for a new manager, the only thing that could have been better at, in my opinion, for them to be at home. I still expect them under a new manager against a struggling Braintree to have enough to defeat them. I'm going to go for, I'm actually going to go for a 2-0 Sutton win. How do you see it going?
Oh, 2-0. I've gone with a 2-2 draw. I think he's only been appointed today, Luke. He's not going to have a massive amount of chance to do anything on the training field with them, I don't suppose. He'll keep his message fairly simple. You hear this a lot with new managers. I've kept my message fairly simple. And there's not a lot to sort of to communicate just yet, because it's chuck them too much detail. It's just going to confuse them. They've only got 1 win in 10 between the 2 of them. This isn't the game of the week, is it? In terms of what you'd imagine to be in terms of games, the teams in form. Bit of a difference because they've now got a new manager. So there's going to be a tension on the Sutton side. I've just gone with a 2-2 draw, just purely because at the moment they're both a little bit wretched in form. They both won't want to lose, and I can't see either of them winning either.
Moving on to the next fixture, it's Eastleigh, of course, recently appointed their manager. He settled in very well at Eastleigh, of course, picking up 4 points in his opening 2 games, going away to Truro and winning there. As for Solihull Moors, they found their man now, Chris Millington, who we've already spoken about in quite a bit of detail tonight. I genuinely feel this is the perfect type of game for Chris Millington to be able to set up his side. Away from home, Halifax last season, I think, had the second best away record in the division. It was actually the home record that let them down. And I think away at Eastleigh, he'll set up his Solihull Moors side perfectly. I still think Eastleigh, with a new manager, clearly got a bit of form at the moment now. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. How do you see it going?
I've gone with a 2-1 Eastleigh win. Again, Chris Williamson's not going to have a massive amount of time with his team. Scott Bartlett did very well. They did very well last week. They went down to 10 men against Wheelstone and contained them really well, managed to get a draw out of it and follow that up with the win against Truro. So to take 4 points out of those games with a new manager is an excellent return and just gives them a bit of form. Solihull obviously aren't in as much of a good run of form. And I think it will take Millington a couple of games to work out what he's got. So in that sense, Solihull will go in and try and prove themselves. Their players have got to go and try and prove themselves. Eastleigh are at home, and I think they'll edge this 2-1.
Moving on to the next fixture, it's my team, FC Halifax Town, coming up against Brackley. Halifax Town do have the opportunity to make it 5 wins out of 5 for the first time since 2022, which was back when Pete Wild was in charge. And they're coming up against the Brackley side, who, of course, lost to Wheelstone in midweek. I'm quietly confident for this game. I think we've got all the momentum at the moment and all the credentials to make it 5 out of 5. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 Halifax win. How do you see it going?
I've gone 3-1 Halifax win. I mean, you look at it, Luke, unbeaten in 5, 4 wins out of those 5, the best record in the league compared to even those boys at the top end. And Brackley are just when you look at Brackley's results, they're just struggling to score goals. And that's always going to be an issue for teams that are part-time, near the bottom, just come up. Trying to find that proven goal scorer is a real tough gig. And, I think Brackley have been quite resilient, but they're not scoring enough goals. And, by all accounts, I've said they were a bit out-muscled by the Stones in the week. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute Halifax are a big, muscly, bustling team, but they're going to have a lot of know-how. They're in a massively good run of form, and they're at home. So I can only see one winner, and I think Halifax will win 3-1.
Surprisingly, when it came to betting odds, Brackley are strong favourites for this one, which I don't understand why, to be honest. I think they might have made a mistake on that one. But moving on to the next fixture, we'll leave that till the end, as that's the featured match this week. We're going to go on to Hartlepool versus York City. I'm not sure, but I've heard this has been moved to a 12:30 kickoff. Although it does still say 3 o'clock there. Anyway, on the football side of things, Hartlepool have had just 1 win in 9 for them. They've actually only scored 5 goals in 9 too. York, of course, recently losing in midweek isn't ideal for them, but I actually think this is quite a good fixture for them away from home when you consider Hartlepool's form at the moment. Not scoring many goals at all, considering some of the players they've got going forward there, the likes of Alex Reid and Jermaine Francis. It's quite surprising that Hartlepool have struggled so much in front of goal this season. I'm actually going to go for a York win, a York 2-0 victory.
Yeah, I've gone with the York 3-1 win. I think you're right in terms of pools are just not prolific. Just that's where they're really strong, because they're miserly defensively. They're really good defensively. They just you're not going to lose many games, but you're not going to win many games, right? If you're not going to score a huge amount of goals. So I think York, when they click and the way that Stuart Maynard plays, they've got a huge amount of firepower, huge amount of top end sort of quality. I think the big thing for York now is to get that consistency. They've shown a real level of inconsistency since Stuart Maynard's come in. They've won one, lost one, and drawn one to like the Carlisle, Scunthorpe, and Forest Green. So they've had a tough run of games, no two ways about it. But they are one of the favourites, and if you're one of the favourites, you've got to be picking up probably slightly better results across the board than they have in those last few games. But I think York will win 3-1.
Moving on to the next fixture, which is Southend United versus Aldershot Town. Southend have had a bit of a tricky time of things as of late. Of course, winless in 4, losing to Scunthorpe as well, after previously being defeated to Eastleigh. Of course, in midweek, I actually think it's a pretty good point. They went away to Boreham Wood and managed to pick a point up there. Back at home, back at Roots Hall now, up against an Aldershot side who themselves have been very mixed this season, as we're aware, capable of scoring goals, yet also capable of conceding a lot. I think the Shots will be disappointed to not have picked up all 3 points in midweek, considering that Braintree went down to 10 men as well when the Shots were leading 1-0, and they still managed to come back and pick a result up there. Roots Hall, of course, they lost at home to Scunthorpe for the first time this season. I still don't think they're going to lose many at home this season. And I think this is the game for them to get back to winning ways, particularly considering that Parallon as well should be back, who's been pivotal to them. And they've clearly missed him as of late. He actually came on from the bench against Boreham Wood. So I'm going to go for a Southend 3-1 victory. How do you see it going?
I've gone with a 2-0 Southend win. I think Southend are one of those teams that are probably underachieving at the moment, Luke, and we keep talking about showing a response off the back of a bad result with Southend, and that can't continue if they want to sort of commit to trying to be one of the top teams in the league. Shots were able to arrest the slide against Braintree. They'd let 8 in 2 games prior to that. I wouldn't want to be going to South. I know Southend are struggling a little bit up top in terms of who they've got. Tom Hopper's been playing. Who's a lad that came on? Is it Walker? Came on, scored against Boreham Wood in the week. I did watch that on DAZN, and it was a decent enough game. Southend certainly did rally to get back into that game. But yeah, I think Southend are going to be too strong for Aldershot, and they'll win 2-0.
Moving on to the next fixture, which is Tamworth versus Morecambe. I actually think this is probably one of the worst possible fixtures for Morecambe. You've mentioned it earlier. Tamworth are well known for being a really physical and a type of bully boy side, in a good way, I say that as well. And coming up against Morecambe at the moment, who I think fitness is clearly an issue, as I think a lot of people expected. They're tiring in games, and they've got a lot of technically gifted footballers, but potentially not physical enough. And I think their aim is always, at the moment, feels like it's to try outscore teams, and I think Tamworth will be strong enough defensively to deal with them. I'm actually going for a 3-0 Tamworth win. I think it's the perfect game for Tamworth. They'll physically bully Morecambe off the ball, in my opinion, and they're on great form at the moment too. Tamworth, just 1 defeat in 7 and 1 defeat at home all season. So I can only see one winner in this game. I'm going to go for a 3-0 Tamworth win. How do you see it going?
I've been a little bit kinder to Morecambe, and I've given them the credit the fact they might score 1 goal, Luke. I've gone with 3-1. I think Morecambe can score goals. We've seen that. It's just, but like I said before, and like you just said, they are going to bombard Morecambe, and if Morecambe aren't up to the task, the goals that Gateshead scored the other night were excellent goals. They carved open Morecambe at times. Like I said, it won't be like that with Tamworth, and no disrespect to Tamworth, but it might be a little bit more crash it forward, and they've got to be up for it, or else they will get drubbed. And I think someone IA79 put 6-1 to Tamworth here. If someone else put 4-1, I think we're all in agreement that Tamworth could handsomely win this. So no, like Morecambe will probably win, Luke.
Yeah, I think as well, Morecambe themselves, to actually predict them to concede more than 3 goals is a sensible decision, because they're averaging to concede over 3 goals a game, and they've played 10 games now. But no, moving on to the next fixture, Wealdstone versus Altrincham. Wealdstone themselves, another impressive victory in midweek. They just seem to keep grinding results out, don't they, Wealdstone? They might win one, lose one, but potentially when you least expect it. I thought away at Brackley, that'd be a tough place to go, and they won there quite convincingly. They're coming up against an Altrincham side who have had a significant amount of injuries, actually sit just one place above the drop zone at the moment. Of course, Ollie Crankshaw's been out injured. Kyle Redding, I think, has been suspended, and I think he's had a 3-match suspension, so I don't think he'll be back for this game either. So that's your 2 best wingers out injured. Wealdstone, I've seen you play this season. You're very good at grinding out results, and I think they'll be able to grind out another one here against a very light Altrincham side at the moment. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Wealdstone win.
I've gone for exactly the same, Luke. I think you're right in terms of Wealdstone are good at the Vale generally. Last week was a little bit frustrating. They were playing 10 men against Eastleigh, and they just were a little bit lethargic in getting the ball forward quick enough to try and create and stretch them. And we gave them the opportunity to sort of defend well. Whereas they played Brackley off the park. So I think slightly more consistent Wealdstone will be even better than what we've got with them at the moment. We're going to get that with the squad we've got. It's expected, but what the thing with Altrincham is, I know they're 20. If they haven't won any games in 5, but they're not getting absolutely battered, Luke. They've lost 2-1, 1-0, 2-1, 2-1, and 3-1. So they're in games. They're not scoring a load of goals, but not getting battered. So difficult period for them. Probably underachieving more than most of the teams, maybe even more than someone like Southend. I've got mitigating circumstances, but coming to the Vale's not going to be a nice one for them the way they're feeling at the moment. And just on that, Luke, I added someone IA79 said massive vote for Wealdstone on Saturday. What's your thoughts, Paul? And just very quickly, Wealdstone have got a vote from their shareholders, which many are fans, to vote in the some new ownership that are going to come to the football club. A guy called Nick Semiker. He's a sports club investor. He's been on the board of Leyton Orient in the last few years. He invests in other football clubs. He's got, I think, a lower league team in Germany, and he's put a proposal forward to invest some money, some much needed funds into Wealdstone. We've got a new ground on the horizon. We're trying to hang on in the National League, and this could be a real game changer for the football club. In terms of their future stability and their ability to kick on, because at the moment they're a little bit hamstrung, as all you fans know in the National League, a bit hamstrung by the ground that they have, the lease that they've got, the lack of funding that comes from someone who wants to put some money in. So listen, we're not going to be Wrexham overnight or greedy, but it's the baby steps towards some, and for us and as fans and myself, it's a very welcome piece of news. It's predicted he will become part of the ownership group, and I think the Wealdstone board have done very, very well and done their real due diligence in terms of getting the right person for the football club, because the fans have worked so hard over the last few decades to get it to where it is, and they don't want that to be undone. So the board have trusted themselves to do what they think is best for the club. This guy Nick Semiker appears to be the best fit at the moment in time. So on Saturday we could have voted in new ownership and get 3 points on the board.
They're huge underdogs in this division, Wealdstone, and every season they overachieve. The last 2 seasons, surviving on the final day both times. For me, it'd make a great documentary, if you get what I mean, to document Wealdstone's season because of the ups and downs, and to just have that bit of ownership, just to be able to potentially make Wealdstone more comfortable within the National League, where it's not every season you're going to be down there. If you can just have that little bit of investment to be able to kick on and establish yourselves more in this division, it'd just be excellent for you guys. And I think what Wealdstone have done over the last couple of years is extraordinary to be able to survive in this division for as long as they have done. I think, has it been 6 years, 5 years, 6 years now you've been in this division, which is ridiculous considering, the likes of Weymouth who struggled, who come up, Oxford City. Not many sides who come into this division, not really playing in the division in the past, have been able to survive like Wheelstone have. And credit to the division. But moving on to the next fixture, Yeovil versus Boreham Wood. Bit of a tricky game for Boreham Wood. Of course, I think they will still be the favourites coming into this one. We'll go back to that Woking game. I missed that. But it's a bit of a tricky game for Boreham Wood. Yeovil 3 wins on the spin, scoring a lot of goals at the moment. Of course, Andrew Olawabor is back there now. I think he's got on the score sheet. But Boreham Wood themselves picked up a good result in midweek, remain unbeaten. Of course, just one defeat for them this year, which came on the opening day against Rochdale. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. How do you see it going?
I've gone with a 2-2 draw, actually. I saw Boreham Wood play in the week. And what we've always said about Boreham Wood is defensively, they're very, very good and always have been. Real tough nut to crack. And yes, they have had their Shimangas up top. But, they found some real gems going forward as well. And can't remember the name of the kid that's scoring the goals. But, he scored again in the week. And they're doing very well in both boxes. He's dropped Nathan Ashmore, who was a real stalwart for Boreham Wood in the goals. He's gone on loan to Bedford. He's brought a young kid in from West Ham, so he's put trust in him, and he seems to be working. And Wood look a really, really good footballing team, high on confidence, and they're playing against a team that are also high on confidence. Richard Dryden's up for manager of the month, isn't he? Was an interim, then was an assistant to Webb. He's now the permanent manager till the end of the season. So he's had three sort of different roles in a short space of time, and it's now his team. It's up to him now to do what he needs to do. And fair play, 3 wins in a row. Would have only lost 1 in 12. Excellent match on paper in terms of form, and I think they're both good defensively. Both have improved going forward with Olawabori coming on board as well. So I've gone with a 2-2 draw.
Moving on to the next fixture, or the previous fixture, Woking versus Truro. Truro losing in midweek to Eastleigh. Woking actually defeating Solihull Moors away from home by 3-0. I think they're going to back it up with another victory here. I'm going to go 2-1 Woking.
I've gone 1-0 Woking. I mean, apart from smashing Morecambe, 5-0, wasn't it? Morecambe down to 10 men. They've really struggled otherwise. We know that, Luke. We can't say much more than that. They're on the road again going up to Woking. Woking had that excellent win against Solihull 3-0, but they've been involved in tight matches other than that. So not a lot of goals in this. I've gone Woking 1, Truro 0.
Moving on to the final 2 fixtures now, and potentially the most mouth-watering ties. Scunthorpe United coming up against Carlisle United, who, of course, got back to winning ways in midweek, did Carlisle, defeating Hartlepool at home. It was the Regan Linney show once again, not just in terms of, I think he did score, but also his assists as well that he got in that game. I watched the highlights and he was centrepiece to absolutely everything for Carlisle United. I would genuinely go as far to say, for his position, he's the best player in his position in this division. The concern is I feel like Carlisle rely on him so heavily, and when teams have been able to stop him, they have been able to stop Carlisle. We saw against Hartlepool as well. I think at times defensively they were cut open, Carlisle. I still think there's underlying issues there defensively for them, and even in the midfield too. But to be fair to them, they got back to winning ways in midweek against Hartlepool. Scunthorpe, though, I've not backed them when I probably should have this season, considering the way they've started. And for me, for this one, it's not just a case of me feeling I've got to back them, which I feel like I do, to be fair, because of the way they've started. I actually think they're going to win this one. I'm going to go for a 3-1 Scunthorpe win. How do you see it going?
I've gone with 3-2. Gone with 3. Look, the stats don't lie, Luke. Scunthorpe are unbeaten all season, okay? And if you look at Carlisle's results, they've lost to York and Rochdale. They really need a result against a top 7 competitor. Yes, they beat the team you expect to beat. I get all that. But they need to start winning games in and around them. Okay. And I think it's got potential to have a lot of goals in it. And I'm with you. I think Scunthorpe will go, they'll go ahead of Carlisle in points with 2 games in hand over them. They can really now stretch that sort of lead or get that gap between one of their big competitors. So Scunthorpe got all to play for, and I think they'll win 3-2.
I just want to address the issue as well with Carlisle, and I've had a lot of it's happened with York and Oldham. It's not just Carlisle, but obviously I have opinions about certain things in terms of how they're performing on the field. And I just want to say nothing is personal, to be fair. I genuinely don't have an agenda against any club. Some may say I do because of Rochdale, with them being, rivals of Halifax historically. But I don't, to be fair. I don't really have any real dislike to any National League club. That's why I cover the division as a whole. But obviously, I am going to have my opinions, because I just feel like it'd be very boring if I just was always just saying, oh yeah, Carlisle, bit unlucky, weren't they? They'll do better next week. I'd rather actually be honest and kind of give my opinion than just come on here and just, do everything to kind of like get everyone to listen, if that makes sense, by just saying everyone's doing well in the division and they were unlucky. I'd rather be honest and give me opinion. And it's the same if anyone said about Halifax, I'm not offended by it. I might disagree with you and want a debate, but when and it doesn't affect me, by the way, but when I see like full-on personal insults in the chat below, to me, to be honest, it just shows that you can't actually have a debate on your football club, to be honest. And I think I'm not bothered. I hope he comments again, to be fair, because I find it funny. But I worked out it was a 50-year-old man, right, last week for the Carlisle game, when Carlisle lost to York, after the Rochdale, just before the Rochdale game, when I backed Rochdale to win. Completely insulting me. It didn't bother me, to be honest, but it completely insulted me. And to be honest, I was just sat there laughing. And every time I tried to make a point across, he came back, but it was just an insult. And to me, to be honest, I just think it's a bit pathetic, to be fair, considering that based on like the numbers on end of his profile, he was born in 1970 or whatever, to get very rattled by me, it kind of makes me laugh, to be honest. And like I've said, and that goes to everyone in the live chat as well, please keep your opinions coming. And if you disagree with like me and Paul or anything, we promote you to actually come out and say it. But just, I suppose, kind of do it in the right way, because I think for everyone themselves as well, it's better to actually have a debate, and I think it's more fun to, rather than just having personal insults thrown. Of course, I know, Paul, you've got it before when Barnet were in this division at times, but it'd be better to just have an actual debate, wouldn't it, than kind of just have personal insults, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, completely. And, I think our listeners and viewers are very respectful in that sense, and it's good banter. And, like you, Luke, I don't have any particular agenda against any football club. I love the National League. I have my opinions on the way teams play, the way players are, the way managers manage, like we all do. And, we're not always right. And, we're not gospel in terms of what we say. But, listen, it's great that we've got viewers and listeners that want to engage and want to have that banter and have those opinions. And, as long as it doesn't get too personal, which I don't think it ever does, then long may it continue. It's good fun.
No, it very rarely happens. And to be fair to the guy who actually came, it were nothing that bad, to be fair. Someone's do the maths, Luke. Yeah, it was actually 1974 at the end, to be fair. I've actually said that wrong. So I'm not helping myself here at all. But no, we'll move on to the final fixture that we're going to preview. And it is going to be the game of the game week. Of course, first versus second. Whoever wins this game will be top of the National League come 5 o'clock on Saturday. Of course, if it's a draw, Forest Green Rovers will remain top, but it will still be in Rochdale's hands to go top if they win their games in hand. Firstly, what's been your thoughts on both clubs recently? Of course, great starts to the season. Midweek wasn't ideal for either club. Forest Green dropping points to Boston away. I think that's the first side this season to actually stop Forest Green from scoring. And as for Rochdale, losing to Halifax in midweek, of course, we've spoken a little bit about that.
Yeah, they're probably coming into the game with results they didn't expect to get. No disrespect to Halifax or Boston, but you'd have thought they would have looked at that and seen that this could be 3. Could be 3 points. I think with Forest Green, Robbie Savage, when we spoke to him earlier in the season, Luke, and his philosophies and the way he sees the league, he wants to win it. He wants to do it in the right way. I think the challenge Forest Green Rovers have got at the moment is they've got to start turning draws into wins. I think they had 3 draws in the last 5. And if you're going to challenge at the top end, although you're unbeaten, you've got to try and stamp your authority a little bit more and have more W's in that column than possibly draws. So I think that's maybe the one little criticism of Forest Green. But I know when we spoke to Robbie about XGs, I don't know what their XGs are, but he's not going to be unduly concerned with the fact that they're not winning games, they're not losing games, and they're creating chances, I imagine. So maybe just tweaking that a little bit, getting draws to wins. Rochdale, I think they're the best football team I've seen play this season. As I say, I haven't seen Forest Green play, for example. I haven't seen York play. So I'll have to wait and see in terms of those sorts of clubs coming up. But I definitely think Rochdale are the best footballing team I've seen. I think you agree with what you saw the other night against Halifax. And it may be an unexpected result against Halifax, and they're gonna look for a response. There's no two ways about it. And there's a real nugget here, real carrot here dangling in front of them, Luke, is they go top of the league. And whenever you're top of the league, it sends out a statement to the rest of the league as to you got to catch us now. And once you're in that position, you want to keep it. So yeah, 2 massive games: Scunthorpe, Carlisle, Forest Green, Rochdale. Again, it's going to kick up that top 4, 5, 6. So a good set of fixtures this weekend. I think Forest Green Rovers will win 2-1.
I think there's not many sides for me that are actually capable of going to Forest Green and winning. I think York was a side that on another day they could have won. To be fair, on another day Forest Green could have won that game as well. But I still think York were a side that were actually capable of beating Forest Green. And I think the only other side, maybe it's another time of me doing disjustice to Scunthorpe because they came so close, so I'd probably have to include them. And I'd probably include Boreham Wood, actually. But the only other side for me that I think is capable at the moment of actually going to Forest Green and winning is Rochdale. But this all matters on the team selection of McNulty. These are by far, from what I've seen so far this season, and this includes
Oh, you're frozen, Luke.
probably far. Are we back?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah.
Something just happened there. Yeah. From alongside York, although I think I'd put these two slightly ahead of York so far. I think York will get better as the season goes on, though. These are the two best sides I've seen so far this season. But yeah, I think McNulty's team selection against Halifax were very strange. Starting Devante Rodney on the bench, he's got to start for this fixture. And even during the game, he needs to make the right decisions because it's going to be a tight game, in my opinion, this one. For example, Wednesday night, Alarakia, or Tuesday, was it Wednesday night? Yeah. Alarakia was on, causing Halifax loads of issues. And then he brought him off, brought a left back on, and then moved Rodney out to the wing, which I just found very strange. He brought a centre-half on as well when they were losing for another centre-half, which were a little bit strange as well. So I think he needs to get his tactics spot on for this game. And if he does, Rochdale do actually stand a chance of getting something or potentially winning. But these two are speaking to me like my dad and my uncle the other night and saying, who do we think is better, Forest Green and Rochdale? And we were really struggling to pick who the better side was. And I just think this is going to be a really tight game. I just hope both sides go for it. I'm actually going to go for a 2-2 draw for this one. What's your actual prediction for this game?
Forest Green 2, Rochdale 1.
So backing Forest Green then to win.
They're at home, off a better result than Rochdale. Rochdale, yes, they did make changes, but they did get beaten a week. It's a really tough one to call, Luke. Really tough one to call.
That wraps up the predictions then. These are the current scores at the moment between myself and Paul. Paul has now taken the lead. It also wraps up the podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe. It genuinely does go a long way if you can do that. And also, if you'd like to become a channel member, it is just £2.99 a month. You'll get early access to interviews and exclusive content as well that we produce on this channel. Of course, I think we've got a few interviews, haven't they, we could potentially have lined up coming up very, very soon as well. And yeah, remember to subscribe. Paul, once again, thanks for joining me tonight. I do appreciate it, as always.
No problem, Luke. Enjoy the rest of your week. Good luck to everyone whose teams are playing at the weekend. Obviously, they're all playing. Hope you get the results you want. And I'll see you next week for the debrief of this week, I guess, Luke.
Yeah, let's hope Halifax have made it 5 out of 5 next time I'm on, and I'll be as happy as I've been tonight. But no, thanks to everyone that's tuned in tonight. Please remember to like and subscribe. Check out our sponsors, cards accepted, and we will see you next time. Bye for